caution. Today I'm going to deal in some considerable detail with a pressing social problem, a problem which requires that I go into some considerable detail with certain people which you could find, while not in the least offensive, I don't believe, you could find perhaps a little overly sensitive or even embarrassing. So you have been warned, because I'm going to deal with the problem of the hordes of prostitutes on the streets of Vancouver. Citizens wonder how this can come about. Squads of girls parading up and downtown in all sections of the downtown east side and the downtown uptown area, and nothing can be done. Visitors to town are embarrassed sorely. They are harassed and solicited all over the place. Locals too, men and women, especially women, find it very offensive when they are propositioned by tricks. Tricks being the customers. And when I say the streets are infested, I mean they are infested. You can see for yourself. Vancouver, since the early part of this year, has become open sesame for girls selling sex. There is nothing funny about it whatsoever. Violence and prostitution has increased, there's no doubt about it. And it's a problem which you in the public must understand. And the reason you must understand it is to know who is to blame. Is it the police not doing their job? Is it the prosecutors not properly interpreting the law? Or is it the courts? Most of all, perhaps it's Parliament, which with all its other more pressing matters cannot seem to get down to a simple amendment to the criminal code to give the system of justice a chance to clean up the streets. Prostitution is, has been, and always will be a social problem. Normally our kind of society accepts a certain type of non-pest prostitution activity in a city. But first you must understand that the act of prostitution is in itself not illegal. It only becomes illegal when it involves keeping of a bawdy house, procuring a person, pimping, or living off the avails of prostitution, and finally, for the purposes this morning, when you are convicted as a prostitute of a certain kind of soliciting. And that's where the problem particularly lies now. I don't think there is one law enforcement authority or prosecutorial establishment in Canada which knows at the moment which way to go or what to do. Now, I want us to let's take another look at the problem of the streets while I give you some more background to the situation in Vancouver, British Columbia. There are all kinds of prostitutes, you might say. These are street hookers. Some may be junkies, some may not be junkies. Some may be amateurs, part-time prostitutes. Now, some may be real chippies, and some may be, but you don't see them on the streets, the high-class ones who operate with the beepers and who, when they don't become involved in a bawdy house, can't be caught. This particular area, we have them in the Unit Block East Hastings, we have them in the 200 Block East Georgia, we have them on Georgia Street, we have them in Pendle and Jarvis, and of course we have that eyesore which must embarrass the downtown area and every other area, the corner of Hornby and Georgia. What to do about this particular problem? How can we really get at the total situation and try and clean it up? Well, let me tell you that it all goes back to a specific case. The police now don't pick up girls for soliciting. They may start, you see that Air Canada sign, which is so ironic and unhappy for Air Canada, just above the girls operating at that corner now, which has become an eyesore in the city of Vancouver. It really is a very sad situation. And when you're doing a story like this, as we have been doing here, it becomes sadder than that. Because to give you the full story, one must talk to some of the girls involved in this. I want you to listen closely to a chat I had with a 21-year-old girl who has been on the streets of Vancouver for years.
Tell me this, Candy, will you find it easy to talk to me? Yeah.
Maybe a wee bit nervous?
Yeah.
When I speak to you, will you speak up as loudly as you can?
Yeah.
Okay. How many tricks have you done today?
About 2.
About 2?
2.
Now, what would you make on that?
150.
$75 a trick?
Yeah.
How old are you?
21.
21. How did you get into this, what shall I call it, business?
Well, my girlfriend introduced it to me about 2 years ago, and I started it and I liked it. So.
You started it and you liked it. Okay, tell me about your girlfriend. Had she been a hooker on the streets?
Yeah.
And how did it come up that you went into business as well as her? No, I mean, what made it so attractive? What did she tell you that made the whole thing attractive to you?
The money, basically. You know, the money's really good, so.
The money's really good. And where did you do your first trick? I mean, was it on the street or was it in a nightclub or something?
On the street.
On the street. And tell me how you went about it. Did your girlfriend show you how to do it?
No, she told me, you know, just be really friendly to the people that come up and stop and say hello, and so I did, and we started talking, and then we discussed the price, and
away you went.
Yeah.
Now that was 2 years ago when they were still booking girls for ordinary soliciting, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Wasn't it more difficult then?
Yeah, it was.
How is it now?
Great.
What do you mean great?
Well, the only thing the police really do is just stop you, ask you for ID, and that's all they can do.
How do you know that's all they can do?
Well, that's all they do now,
Yeah.
because the law has changed.
And do you know how the law has changed or why the law changed?
No, I don't.
Did anybody ever tell you about the Debra Hutt case?
No.
You ever heard of Debra Hutt? Debra Hutt? No, you haven't. Okay, back to do you operate mostly on the street?
No, out of the clubs, mostly.
You work out at the clubs, you meet people in the clubs?
Yeah.
Don't you think the prostitution, do you know if it's illegal or not?
It's hard to say. It's about, no, I wouldn't say it's totally legal, but it's far from being illegal too, you know.
You don't feel it's illegal at all?
No, I don't.
Now, when you pick up somebody on the street, do you just stand there or do you approach the man?
I approach them.
What do you say to them?
Hello, how are you doing? You know, did you have a good time? And it just, you know.
Or do you want a good time?
Yeah.
What will the average guy say to you?
How much?
Just right like that?
Yeah.
How many will refuse you out of hand?
Not about 1 out of every 3.
And the others will express an interest?
Yeah.
But tell me business is not very good just now though in Vancouver.
Well, it is. It depends, you know. It's okay. It's the same as it's always been.
But they tell me you can talk a girl down now from, say, $75
Yeah,
to...
because there's more out there now. That the laws have changed. There's more ladies
More?
out there.
And are they a different kind of lady?
Well, some of them go for a lot less than the regulars that were out there before. Some of them go for a lot less.
How many regulars do you know around town?
About 8.
8, is that all?
Mm-hmm.
And which streets would you prefer to operate?
Well, Davies. I like Davie during the day. Yeah.
During the day? What times during the day?
Well, from about 1 till about 6.
So business is good in the afternoons?
Uh-huh.
How many days a week do you work?
Off and on. I work about every second day.
Every second day?
Yeah.
So how many tricks a day?
About 5.
5 tricks a day, at an average of how much?
About 400.
So you make about $400 a day? What, 3-4 days a week?
Yeah.
So that's what, $1,200 a week?
About.
What do you do with the money?
Buy clothes, pay rent, you know, normal things, whatever. Put it in the bank.
Go to Hawaii? Go to Hawaii?
No, not yet.
How about income tax? Hey, that hasn't become a problem yet.
No.
The question of income tax. Now, on the legal side of it, the police don't give you much hassle at all, eh?
No, just ID.
Just ID. What ID do you produce? What ID do you produce?
Just birth certificate, picture.
You carry a birth certificate and your picture with you, eh?
Yeah.
And you're, how old did you say you were?
21.
21 years old. And they don't bother you anymore?
No, they can't. What can they do? They can't bother you.
Unless you become a pest on the street. Do you feel unwanted on the street?
No, it's not. I don't pester people. If people aren't interested, I'll just say, okay, have a nice day and walk away. I won't sit there and, you know, well, come on, you know.
You don't nag them.
No.
Now, where do you go, though?
Where do I go?
You meet a trick, as they call it, on the street, and he agrees to pay the money. Where'd you go?
Oh, to a hotel.
Same hotel all the time?
Well, yeah, the same hotel. I'll just go in the back, or he can go up first, and then I'll go up by myself or something, you know.
Who pays the room?
Well, the first date pays the room, and then I have it for the rest of the night.
And does he pay that out of your take? Suppose he agrees
Yeah.
the price of $75.
Yeah, then he'll take it out of what I make. Sometimes they'll pay out of their own money, though. You know, it depends if you can talk them into it.
Okay, and if they can't talk them into it, you get $50 net.
Yeah.
You go to fancy hotels?
Well, it depends. Different hotels. I don't go to the same hotel every night.
Yeah, you know why you shouldn't, don't you?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, it's because people will start getting to know what I'm doing,
And then you get nailed for the hotel or get nailed for keeping a body house.
right.
How's your health?
Good.
Ever any problems because of the different sex? The different...
No.
No problem?
I go in and get checked all the time, so I don't let no problems.
Yeah. And you go, where do you go? The local Metropolitan Health Clinic?
Yeah, yeah.
They go in and they check you out.
Mm-hmm.
They know what you do for a living.
No.
But they're happy to check you out
Yeah.
anyway.
They're happy for me to come in.
Now, how do you feel about the whole business yourself? How do you really feel about it? Did you ever think you'd grow up to be a hooker?
I don't know. Sometimes I do. I don't know. It's just so easy, and it's so easy to live doing it, so
And to live well.
yeah.
But what about the guy in the background that you give half your money to, or all your money to? Is there one?
No.
Honest, no kidding?
No kidding.
You don't have a pimp.
No.
Lots of girls do, you know.
Yeah, I know.
The other last question, nasty question. You drink a little bit, I know.
Yeah.
You mean you'll take a drink?
Sure.
Anything else?
No.
How many girls on the street take drugs?
Oh, quite a few. Smoke weed, you know, and cocaine, but that's about all. I don't know any junkies or nothing.
You don't know any junkies?
But there are some, yeah.
Oh, well. What shall I say? Best of luck?
Yeah, I guess.
When are you gonna, how much you got in the bank?
About $1,200.
That's all?
Yeah.
A lot of fancy clothes?
Yeah, a lot of fur coats. And,
A lot of fur coats?
Yeah.
Paid for out of your own earnings?
yeah,
Best of luck, anyway.
okay.
Now, what about the law and the application of the law in prostitution? I've spoken to so many lawyers and so many experts in this field that one must narrow it down to the most simple explanation that I can give you. If I'd brought a lawyer on here this morning, they would have confused us from now till the end of time, and I say that with respect. In the old days, we had a thing called the VAG laws. VAG C it was. Being a common prostitute or night walker is found in a public place and does not, when required, give a good account of herself. Good, easy, simple conviction for a person whom the police could prove was a common prostitute. That was wiped out. And then we came to the criminal code as it now starts. Every person who solicits any person in a public place for the purpose of prostitution is guilty of an offense punishable on summary conviction. Now that went along fine for years, until a girl called Debra Hutt on the 5th or the 8th of May 1975 put up a defense to the interpretation of the word soliciting, and therein lies the trouble. Because in the famous Debra Hutt judgment, just let me tell you about this. Debra Hutt was convicted in a lower court in Vancouver, police court. She was acquitted in the county court. She was reconvicted in the Court of Appeal, and she was acquitted in, of all places, the Supreme Court of Canada. Because for the first time in all the years that section was there, somebody turned up the shorter Oxford English Dictionary. And they found that the definition of the word solicit of women to accost and importune for immoral purposes. And then they looked up importune, and they found that importune means to solicit pressingly or persistently. And they decided in the Debra Hutt case that she had not solicited pressingly and persistently. Must just give you a little bit of the background on that. She had been, my interpretation of this very confusing and difficult judgment, enticed into an unmarked police car. Conversation took place around this incident, and in fact, the authorities now tell me that this form of conversation she had with the police officer becomes in effect the working girl's charter. This is how far a girl can go without being pressing and persistent. And I want to quote exactly from the judgment. The girl says, "Hi." The policeman says, "Hi." She doesn't know he's a policeman. The girl says, "Do you want to go?" He says, "What do you mean?" She says, "Do you want to go out?" He says, "Okay." She says, "It's $30. He says, "Oh gosh, what will we do?" The girl, "I'm a working girl." That means a prostitute. Policeman, "Oh, what is that?" And she replies, "Do you want a girl?" He says, "Okay, yes." She says, "I'm a working girl." He says, oh, she adds, "I am a prostitute." Policeman, "Oh, I have never done this before." And she says, "Oh." When he says, "I'm staying at the Dufferin." And she says, "Okay." And he says, "Okay." And she says, "Let's go." So that is not a pressing and persistent thing. If the man had said, the policeman, enticing the girl at this particular time in the first conversation, when she said, "You want a girl," and he said no, that would have been the end of that. Now, because of that, however, that is the definition used by the Crown to say a normal, pleasant conversation between a girl and a trick cannot be used to convict her of soliciting. Soliciting was, prior to this, somebody looked at the shorter Oxford English Dictionary, was perfectly simple and straightforward. And on repeat offences, the girl got 30 days to go out and rest up at a collar before she could come back onto the street again. So what must be done? I'll tell you what must be done. The criminal code must be amended. That's if you're in favour of the proposition that I give you, that hordes of working girls, prostitutes on the street are a public pest. But I hesitate to tell you that the present proposal to amend the criminal code is almost as confusing as anything else. It said that soliciting, this is what they might do. Soliciting need not be pressing or persistent conduct in order to constitute an offence. They're going to tighten it up by putting that in, and I'll give you dollars to donuts that soliciting need not be pressing will again go all the way up the Supreme Court of Canada, because need not can be argued as might not, could not, should not, will be, or is certainly a simple solicit. It's confusing. So the politicians better straighten up their act and amend the code to make it simple so that we can properly clear this pest off the street. Next, though, I'm going to go to a different aspect. I'm going to talk to one of our senior immigration officials on the border jumpers, the girls who come up here and claim they are making fortunes on the streets of Vancouver. It's quite obvious that there are hundreds of girls operating the streets of Vancouver at different times and different places. They are not all Canadian girls. Goodly number might well be American girls, operated some of them by pimps on both sides of the border. But how much money can these girls make? According to what they claim, it would blow your mind. And let's talk to Walter Jennings of Canada Immigration about the money involved and what his department can do to the border jumpers. Mr. Jennings, is it conceivable that these American hookers can come up here and charge $1,000 a trick?
Well, Mr. Webster, it seems that they do pretty well. We've talked to a few people who've told us that they've made quite fancy sums of money. We had one American girl recently who told us she'd been up here with her American pimp for 3.5 years and had banked $100,000 in the United States, and they were planning to retire and open a coppercraft store in the next year or two.
Just a minute, this is one gal?
One girl.
Not a stable of gals?
No, it's one
$100,000 in 3.5 years.
Yeah.
Tax-free, of course.
That's correct.
I'm going to open a coppercraft store somewhere in the States.
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah. Back to my original point, though. Did your people not recently challenge some people on the street who were very annoyed indeed?
Yes, we had the 2 American girls last week, as a matter of fact, and we arrested them and eventually ordered them deported. But the girls weren't too happy about being arrested. What they were primarily concerned about was that they had $1,000 dates for the next day, and they weren't going to be able to keep them.
$1,000 a trick, that is.
Yes, apparently.
Do these $1,000 a trick gal stand out like a sore thumb on the street as Americans?
No, the way it operates is that our officers don't approach the girls on the street. The Vancouver Police check the girls, and if they see anyone they don't know, they question them. If they find that these girls have an accent or something, and obviously are not Canadians or they're not sure of their status in Canada, they'll call our officers over if our officers are with them. And our officers then interview the girl to see what her status is here and whether she's in violation of the Immigration Act.
Now, take that gal who told you, was a pimp with her when they said that they had made $100,000 in 3.5 years?
No, we just spoke to the girl.
Spoke to the girl. That particular girl now, having told you that, can we securely blacklist that girl from ever coming back into this country?
Once someone has been ordered deported, and she was ordered deported and issued a deportation order, they can't come into Canada without the consent of the minister. And the minister is not likely to give his consent for their re-entry. So if they do come back, they would, of course, be subject to deportation again, but we can also prosecute them.
No, but I remember cases. Do you remember the celebrated case of the pimp who used to cross that border back and forward like a rabbit?
Oh, yes, we have had a few over the years like that. We have one right now who's maybe the same gentleman who sent something of a record. He's been deported 11 times. We've prosecuted him. He's had jail sentences. He's had fines, but he still keeps coming back up. It's so easy for people to come in. They're just coming in for 1 day, 2 days, and with the hundreds of thousands of visitors that cross the border, it's very difficult to pick them up.
So therefore, there's no magic computerized system whereby you can stop a pimp at the border and say, we've got you cold.
Whenever we interview a girl here or have any information on a pimp, we pass it to our border officers. But then it's a matter of whether these officers are referred to a secondary examination at the border. If they're just admitted at the primary inspection line by an officer, then they won't be checked.
So really, the police and your people must spot them right on the street.
Yes, this is correct, and we've found we've been quite successful. We've had, I think, 23 prostitutes and pimps ordered deported in the last, well, June, 3 months, which is not too bad.
Not bad at all, but now what's the procedure? Because I can remember some convoluted procedures whereby being ordered deported, you could be in this country for another 20 years during your various appeals. Have we tightened up on the so-called civil liberties of pimps and hookers?
As long as they don't have any close ties with Canada, if you were to order someone deported who was married to a Canadian or something, then you would have problems with appeals and this sort of thing. But if a person is here as a visitor and overstays, for instance, as most prostitutes do, and we ordered them deported for that reason, they would not have a right of appeal.
In other words, your people say, okay, you have overstayed. Will you escort them back to the border?
Yes, if they're ordered deported, then we will take them back to the border.
Who orders them deported? A special inquiry officer?
It's done by an adjudicator under the new Immigration Act. We have adjudicators who sit sort of like commissioners, and they listen to the evidence from both sides and make a decision as to
when was the act tightened up? It used to be quite loose, as I recall.
Well, on April the 10th of this year, we got the new Immigration Act promulgated, and this has provided a lot more teeth in some ways for us to deal with people like this.
In other words, just not to belabor the point, but if your people notify your office of an American hooker or pimp on the street, or Australian or British, no respect of nationalities, is it?
No, most are American, but we've already deported a Danish girl, a British girl, and an Australian girl recently.
And once your commissioner orders a deportation, they're out?
Yes, that's correct.
Just as quick as that?
Yes.
I'm fascinated by this couple who, just 2 of them, a pimp and a gal, who in 3.5 years, she boasted of $100,000 in the bank.
That's correct.
Is that an unusual kind of boast, or is there this kind of money involved in this
There
caper?
seems to be quite a bit. There's a girl from Oregon we've talked to who's buying a farm, and when she's got it paid for, she's going to marry a farmer. Obviously, she's doing well.
Let's go over that once again. A girl from Oregon who's, I mean, a hooker from Oregon.
That's right.
And this is her happy hooking ground.
Yeah.
She tell your people how much she had in the bank at that time?
No, she didn't say, but she's obviously doing fairly well.
And once she's got the money for the farm, then she'll quit and find an Oregon farmer.
That's right. Yeah.
Maybe we should have a real tighter border, Mr. Jennings.
Well, it's as tight as it can be. Between the United States and Canada, it's so open, going both ways. It's fairly easy to cross, and there's a minimal check, and you've got to temper enforcement of the Immigration Act with the idea that you should make it easy for people to travel across and back and forth across the border. So we have to kind of strike a happy medium on it, and it's very difficult to look very closely at everybody when you've got millions of people crossing that border every year.
When I crossed the American border, though, in a plane in Seattle, they turned up the book to see Webster, J. Do we have the same kind of big book here that they have there?
We have a fairly sophisticated system which just does the same thing, yes.
Your life has been made much more difficult, though, by the lack of aggressive prosecution of prostitutes on the streets of Vancouver.
Well, not our life. Maybe the police find this awkward, but as far as we're concerned, if the person is in violation of the Immigration Act and they're not Canadian citizens or residents of Canada, then we deal with them. But we've always dealt with pimps and prostitutes. Just the last few months, we've set up this program with the Vancouver City Police to go out with them and actually work the streets with them at night.
Are these prostitutes, do these pros aim at any particular segment of society?
I couldn't tell you who their customers are. I've heard the stories about the 72-year-old man who paid a girl $900, but who he was or where he came from, I have no idea.
Finally, these pimps, whom one must regard as evil people, do they have solely American strings that are up here?
Not necessarily. Sometimes they have both Canadian girls and American girls working for them. Sometimes they work both sides of the border.
Do we still have, remember we used to get stories about the traveling circuit of pimps, of prostitutes from Las Vegas to San Francisco to Seattle to Vancouver to Prince George, Prince Rupert and Alaska?
We don't seem to have anything organized. It seems to be the single entrepreneur. We haven't found any connection with any kind of organization or any sort of planned routing of people. It seems to be just a one-on-one thing, one pimp and his crew, and they work various places.
At least we can say pimps are classic free enterprises.
I guess you could say that.
It really is a problem for the police, the immigration, and the public. Now, because of the seriousness of this program this morning, we're going to extend it to the full 90 minutes today and give you a chance to participate on the telephones. I have much material I want to give you yet, and I want to get your questions, and I'm going to try and answer them as straightforwardly as I can. Hello?
Chris,
Yes, where are you speaking from?
let's give you money to go.
From where? Now, you can't use this. Can you? Is this a long distance number you're on? It is. I will stay there. I'll let you stay there. I'll use you the third call. Have you got a good sharp point? Have you a good sharp point you want to make? Okay, keep it sharp. Hold on, you're the second call. Are you there? Keep it short and sharp, will you? Right. Will you keep it short and sharp? Good point. Don't go away. Are you there? Don't go away, and keep it short and sharp when I come to you, will you, please? I've got thousands of calls. Will you keep it short and sharp, please?
15 seconds coming back to you, Jack.
Good idea, and I want you to stay there and ask me that and just put it precisely like that, eh?
9.
Don't go away.
7. 6.
Hold on, please. I'll take...
5.
Only one little legal bit I must give you from my kind of moralistic, puritanical point of view. It doesn't matter where it comes from. This was a judge in Ontario. Why should these girls not be on the streets? Or men, too. Don't forget, we have other kinds of prostitution, which, if anything, are more offensive. The aim of the criminal code, not yet amended, would appear to be the protection of persons from being subjected to a certain kind of solicitation in a public place. Decent men or women who are going to and from their homes, or innocent bystanders, should not be subjected to being importuned by persons seeking sexual gratification. It is an affront to the sense of decency of ordinary citizens. And I think that's why this problem must be tackled face on. First call. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, Jack. What I want to know is, like, this is the oldest profession in the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, why don't they do what they did, like, when I was in the Navy over in Germany? And that is they keep all the prostitution in one area of the city. And that way it's even government-controlled as well.
When it was done in cities in the United States like Buffalo and Detroit, the prostitution-tolerated area of the city became a den of iniquity. In Vancouver, prostitution attracts these evil people who live off these women, and it also attracts the junkies and the drug trade, and is a large part of the underpinning of the drug trade. It's a decision that I wouldn't want to make for legalization. Tolerable, informal control by simple laws to keep the streets clear. You cannot prevent the sale of sex, providing it does not infringe on body houses, procuring, living off the avails. On the street, it's an affront to the sense of decency of ordinary people. Go ahead, please.
Yes?
Yes, sir.
I'll make it very simple. That I do believe in legalization, simply because there's no way that there's any police force that can stop prostitution. Also, the fact that Vancouver is a port.
You don't seem to get the point. The point being that the streets must be kept in a state of decency for the average citizen. Legalizing it would make it a bigger pest. Go ahead, please.
Is that for me?
That's for you.
I was thinking, why don't they tax these girls so high that they couldn't bloody well go on the streets and do it?
Didn't know what you said. Go ahead, please.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Hi, Jack. I just want to know that would there be no more rapes and everything if prostitution was shut off completely?
No, there would not. Go ahead, please.
Hello?
Yes.
Yes, I was just wondering how the heroin treatment program is going to affect the girls. Would it, cause more to come off the streets, or what do you think?
If the Compulsory Heroin Treatment Act is properly administered, as I said to the minister, if it hasn't been watered down too much, there are many girls on the streets of Vancouver underage. Some of them are near amateurs. Some of them are what you call part-time chippers with heroin. And these are the people for whom I have the hopes that if Brannan Lake runs well and can be kept drug-free, and if the community care centers can get these young boys and young girls at the age where they're capable of pretty quick rehabilitation, the compulsory heroin treatment system will be a big help. Now, the girls I talk to in the street, nobody admits they're a junkie.
Most of them.
Nobody admits that they have a pimp. Nobody admits, but you'll notice in that first interview, despite the fact that she claims to make $400 a day, 3 or 4 days a week, she only has $400 in the bank. So what is happening to the money? That girl, I do not believe, was an addict in any way, but the money comes, the money goes, and the future is not good. Go ahead, please.
One of the things I want to know is, the people that can pay the cost of these prostitutes.
Yes.
It's an enormous amount of money to pay out maybe once a week or however often. And it seems like these people would be from the business community, and perhaps a lot of them are part of the law community. And these are the people that are making the laws that keep these...
Well, you raise a couple of points, and I think you're unfair. First of all, there is an element in the legal profession in Vancouver which is very unhappy about the Debra Hutt decision, which means that the working girls cannot be charged with soliciting.
Yeah.
This has reduced the caseload and the legal aid payments for defending soliciting charges and failing to appear charges quite considerably. I don't think you can slander any section of the community as being the particular customers. I was talking to a chap who was down at the CRTC meetings in Vancouver yesterday, and he was from Toronto, and he's quite appalled he said that he had been solicited 8 times in 2 blocks on Georgia Street.
That's pretty bad.
It is pretty bad indeed. But the fact is that you can't blame conventioneers are approached, local businessmen are approached, ordinary people, not necessarily businessmen, are approached. I think the rejection factor is much greater than the first girl told me. I think the rejection factor is more like 1 in 20 than 1 in 3.
But still, you...
And the other thing I must mention to you is that the Attorney General's Department in British Columbia has just issued a strange kind of directive to all the Crown Council to consider charging the customers. Well, there's no reason why the customers shouldn't be charged. You could certainly help to clean the streets. But as the law now stands, a customer would still have to do the same pressingly persistent soliciting before he could be convicted. If a man goes to a girl and she says no and he walks away, it's no offense. But when a man goes to a girl who is not a prostitute and says that, that girl is fully entitled to be thoroughly upset. Webster, more phones. Michelle, 6 minutes, and then what?
Then hooker number 2.
Are we going to split hooker number 2 into 2? We could cut it as we go, you know. It's quite obvious that in my opinion on this kind of topic that I show my particular bias and my particular prejudice. I'm not some kind of do-gooder who thinks you can wipe out prostitution. You cannot wipe out prostitution, but the protection of a sense of public decency is what we must direct our attentions to. Go ahead, please.
What do you think of the idea of moving the girls off the street into a government-controlled house like they have in some European countries?
Quite appalling. I think that's quite appalling. That means you're raising girls to become hookers. As a matter of fact, I once made a speech to a public relations society saying that I was surprised they weren't campaigning for the legalization of prostitution, because any good PR man with the assistance of today's media could set up a fantastic PR campaign to prove that prostitution was a good social science and a good need in the community. And you could show shots of the girls going off to Hawaii for their vacations, their fancy clothes, their big cars, the social good they would do, for instance, by releasing the pressure of tired business executives or whatnot, prevention of rape and molestings and all that jazz. No, it's a moral decision. In West Germany, they have public stock companies with vast barracks housed with prostitutes. And while I am not formally one of those people who advocate or who give total sympathy to women's liberation, I think that the women's liberation movements are dead right when they object to the demeaning and the degradation of women, and to legalize prostitution so that women could be degraded, these women could be degraded for the purpose of sexual gratification, I think is quite intolerable in a civilized society. And I'm not talking about the Judeo-Christian ethic or any religious hang-ups. It's the degradation of the human being which is so horrible. Legalization, dead against it. Go ahead, please.
I think you've already answered my question.
What was that, about legalization?
Yes, I thought, my feeling of to legalize prostitution in respect of houses and business, where the business is taxed, the girls are controlled, and the health is another avenue that would be cared for, and this would get them off the street so that we're not humiliated by them on the street.
It's perfectly simple to get them off the streets. If our members of Parliament and the House of Commons will make a simple, straightforward, fair amendment to the Criminal Code 195.1 and say that any person who approaches anybody else in any public place and offers sex for sale is guilty of an offense. I don't particularly like the police enticement situation, but sometimes it must be done. All we need is a simple clarification. I mean, that Supreme Court of Canada judgment I read to you just now, I had left out all kinds of complications about whether or not a police car unmarked is a public place and all the rest of it. Because I am assured that the meaning of the Debbie Hutt case is that a long conversation which is not pressing and persistent is no longer an offense. That's what must be cleaned up, and the girls can be reduced to a tolerable nuisance on the streets. That's my only answer. Go ahead, please.
Yes, Jack. I wanted to say that I agreed with you about making that law simpler and easier to read. But also we have to find a way to collect that tax money. I mean, across this country, that's worth a lot of dollars.
Let me tell you that I was deeply involved in the reporting of the famous madame in Vancouver, it's now 20 years ago, who, on the instructions of the income tax department, was forced to keep detailed books of her income. But it's kind of like the skim at Las Vegas. How can you be sure that a madame will report her income? We do, I believe, have a couple of places that might be in that category in Vancouver right now. But they are watched by the income tax. The income tax doesn't give a dash where you get your money from. They just want to know how much you got, and they will tax you. On that particular occasion, too, the woman claimed to one of the exchequer courts, or the income tax review courts in Ottawa, that she was entitled to a deduction of, I think it was about $12,500 because of payments she had made to officials to facilitate the operation of her illegal business. And the judge in the court said, well, I'll let you deduct that money if you will give me the names of the people to whom you gave the money. She didn't give the names. She didn't get a tax deduction. She paid her taxes. The income tax department is very efficient at these kind of things, and I have no fear that once they have learned of a large type operation that the taxes are charged. Where from?
Hello?
Where are you speaking from?
Victoria.
Victoria, speak up, sir.
Mr. Webster, I'm afraid I must disagree with your stance on...
That's why I opened the phones.
I come from Hamburg, Germany, where it is legalized, where it isn't a problem, and where I feel that for the customer who would like this sort of service is a lot safer, because the girl, by government laws, has to have their health checked, I think, once a week, therefore making sure that they do not spread VD any worse than it...
Are you talking about the raper ban?
Yes, well, I'm talking about the Helmutstrasse.
The Helmutstrasse and the raper ban, Grant Street in Bombay, that abominable place in Amsterdam. Do you think these places are desirable socially in a civilized country?
I believe that they do have their place, yes, and I do not think that the Reeperbahn and the Helmutstrasse should be confused. The Reeperbahn is mostly a strip of nightclubs.
Hold on, sir, I'll talk to you off there. I must tell my audience first that I'm going to interview another streetwalker, and later I'll be coming up with more phones. Well, Grant Street, Bombay, goddamn disgusting. Mary's house in Alexandria, Mimosas in Beirut, all these legal places. Are you there?
Yes.
That's the guy from Germany.
Yes.
I'm going to come back to you for 1 minute only so you can have a fair say.
Okay.
Okay, don't go away. I won't interrupt you, but I only want you to talk for, you know, a minute, or less than a minute. Hold on, don't go away. In all fairness, I must let the caller with the German knowledge finish his proposition. I could be wrong. I'm not saying I'm right. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, all I really wanted to say is that I've seen prostitution legalized and controlled in such a way that it does not present a nuisance to the general public. In fact, the general public who doesn't want to know anything about the subject can very well ignore it. The girls are out on all the streets. They're in one street only, which is blocked off, has a sign on it says minors stay out, and if you're easily offended by sex, stay out of there. Everybody knows where it is, so those people who want it know where to go. Those people who don't want it know where to stay away from, and everybody's happy.
And you'd like to see it in British Columbia?
I'd like to see it in North America.
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you. Well said. Now, you can't help but feel sorry for the most successful of prostitutes, because they take their lives in their hands. And I want you to listen to the experience of this girl, and I cannot bring it in my heart to disbelieve any word she says of what happened in Point Grey.
Well, I was downtown, and he said he was going to spend $1.5 yards, and we went to my place and partied, and everything was cool. You know, he was really nice. He was young. Apparently he was a chronic alcoholic, and they'd taken his license away forever. And we partied, and then he says, well, maybe I've got another $1.5 yards at home. He says, why don't we go over to my place? And this is just outside Point Grey. So I figured it's not that far, even if it doesn't turn out. You know, I'll just catch a cab back in town. And we got there, and everything was cool. He had this big old gun collection in the living room, a huge house. And he said everything was cool. We partied. I was about to leave, completely dressed, the whole thing. And all of a sudden he put a shotgun up to my head, and he says, you don't know if this is loaded or not, do you? And you know how sometimes you can tell when someone's crazy because of their eyes? And he says, try and make a run for the door. I says, no, you know, if you're going to shoot me, you're going to shoot me right here. You know, that way you'll have some explaining to do. And he says, no. He says, try and make a run for the door. He says, you don't know if this gun's loaded or not. And I just sat there, and he was telling me this was the last sunrise that I was ever going to see. And then he picked up this axe that he had stuck in a piece of wood and started throwing it across the room, missed me by about that much every time. Then he decided, no, he wasn't going to kill me that way. He says, you're the first blonde I've ever brought up here, aren't you? He says, don't think I haven't brought up brunettes or anything. He says, but you're the first blonde. And then he pulled out this pocket knife and started doing little squiggles all over my face and saying, you know, he was going to mar my face so I never look good again and things like that. Then he said, no, he says, I'm not. And this went on for like 2 hours. He was messing with me like this. Then finally he said, stand up. And he had this big old like caveman club that he'd carved out. And he says, I've decided which way you're going. And he says, look at the sunset one more time. He says, because it's the last you're going to see. Told me to stand up, pulled it up over his head like he was going to beat me to death with it, and started laughing and joking around, saying, oh, you know, I just wanted you to spend a couple more hours. Called me a cab, gave me his phone number, wanted me to come back and visit him. I had someone call up and talk crazy to him because, like, he had, you know, shotguns up to my head and throwing
You had
axes.
somebody phone him up and say, don't ever do that again?
Yeah, I had someone call him up and say, you had big fun last night, huh? And he was going, who is this? You know, he says, never mind who this is. You know, you had big fun last night, didn't you? And this man was so scared at the end of the conversation that I haven't seen him downtown since.
What was that night worth to you, $300?
Well, I'd done something earlier, but he had spent $300.
He'd spent $300 on you. As a matter of fact,
But he put me through he put me through changes.
you're taking your life in your hand every day of the week.
You are. I've been working for 5 years, and knock on wood, I really haven't had that many people. You get people that are drunk and don't realize that they're overly drunk, and it's, you know, impossible to do anything. And sometimes they're so drunk they just can't understand it. So, you know, you have to talk with them and explain that, hey, you're not a magician. You know, you've tried your best, but you can't spend 5 or 6 hours for what they've been spending.
Yeah, but what I'm getting at is the fact that there was a girl thrown out a hotel room window the other day. All kinds of girls
the girlfriend
who might look as good as you and all the rest of it, and you don't know what the hell they're getting into any day of the week.
Oh yeah, you could bump into someone who looked all the way nice, mild, sweet, you know, a little person, and he could be a nut.
Is it worth it? Really? Honestly?
Okay, I've been working 5 years, and I've never really had anything that bad, except for the experience I just told you about happened to me. The girlfriend that I first started working with, this is funny, she was in the Holiday Inn on House Street, and she had someone wrap a telephone cord around her neck, and me and a girlfriend were waiting downstairs in the lobby, and it had been a long time, so we went up to her room, and no one would answer the door when we knocked, but we could hear someone crying. And so my girlfriend, she's a big girl, anyway, she ended up busting down the door, and he had this cord wrapped around her neck, and he was threatening on killing her if she made any noises. Well, security came up,
And the girl ended up getting charged with breaking down the door and had to pay for a new door for the Holiday
And the
Inn.
guy who wrapped the telephone cord around the girl's neck, nothing happened to him?
No, he got let go.
Listen, that was a girl. Now, tell me why. I'm not a social worker, you know, and I don't want all the gruesome details, but how did you become? Well, you would object if I called you a hooker.
Well,
wouldn't you?
yeah.
What would you call it?
I don't
What class?
really like the name.
Okay, what class working gal do you call yourself? Where do you stand in the grade?
Just a working girl.
Just a working girl.
You know, some people will call you a whore and things like that. And to me, it tends to lower you into a different class.
What estimation do you have of yourself?
I do it because I like it. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I'm not hurting anybody. I'm not robbing or setting up people to get robbed or anything like that.
Are you on your own?
Oh, yeah.
How come you're on your own? The public thinks that every working gal is in the hands of some guy with a funny hat on who beats her and chases her out in the street.
No, you don't have to be. I'm not denying that there are a few girls that do have someone that they stand out and freeze to death and make about 13 or 14,
13 or
and your mother
14.
says, don't try them, so you've got to try them.
Right.
You know, but that phase is gone.
Now, you work the streets.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Why unfortunately? You say you like the business.
Well,
Why
I
work the
don't-
streets?
Okay, it's the same as someone calling me a whore. It lowers me in my standards. And
But you do it.
for someone, because it's the only way you can do it in Vancouver right now.
Oh, come now. What about the hotel bars?
The hotels you can work for a while. Like there's certain hotels you cannot even get into. But there's maybe 3 or 4 hotels that you can go in and you can work. But it's the fact that they appreciate it, that you're not in there all the time because it's giving the hotel a bad name or whatever. And someday when you bump into someone who has to, you know, that you have to go into a certain hotel with, if you've been working out of that hotel all the time, then they won't let you in.
Wow. That's the end of that hotel.
Yeah.
And you're embarrassed and
need it.
humiliated and you can't meet your
Because,
customer.
Say someone's staying at
Whatever. Forget the
whatever,
name.
yeah. And you've been working out of that hotel every night. You can only do it for so long, and they're going to tell you, hey, I'm sorry, we don't allow working girls in here. You're going to have to leave.
Can you make a deal with a desk clerk?
I'm not used to making deals.
Not in the first-class hotels.
No. It's really hard to. You can get in a lot of trouble. If
In
you
some flea bag,
talk
you
to
can maybe.
someone and who wants to make a deal with a flea bag hotel.
Now, when you make a contact on the street, are you hassled by the police? Where are you hassled?
The police are driving around every night, and they're, you know, keeping tabs and making sure no fights are happening or no guy's too drunk and a whole bunch of girls gang up on him and try and rob him or something crazy like that. But I know the head of Vice. I know a lot of the Vice in Vancouver, and we'll, you know, talk and, you know,
How many
hi,
times
how
have
are
you been
you?
booked?
And I've never been arrested. In
Never,
Vancouver.
ever?
No.
Not even before the Debra Hutt case?
No. And I've been working for 5 years.
They all know you. In other words,
They know me.
the secret of your, quote, success, unquote, is that you are, well...
Intuition, I guess.
Well, tell me about the intuition.
It's gotta be.
How do you know who to approach and who not to approach?
Well, I'll talk with a lot of people, but I don't come right out and say, hi, you know, this is what it is and this is how much it is. Come on, let's go. You know, I'll talk and find out where they're from and how long they're here for and what kind of business they're in. And if something strikes me as not being right, then I'll just say, well, you know, have a nice time.
You'll play the hunches.
Goodbye.
You'll play the hunches.
It's best to talk to people for
Or
a
if you
while.
pick up a guy in a bar, you'll test him out with conversation.
I'll talk for hours. I'm a bad talker.
Yeah.
I'll talk for a long time just to make sure things are cool.
But then you can't afford to waste that much time.
It's best if you do. I mean, it's better than spending a night in jail.
But you've never been in jail. Perhaps that's why.
Yeah, well, knock on wood, it's because,
But
you know, I
the
haven't
secret
talked
of your financial success surely is volume.
No, because sometimes it works out better when you do talk to people a lot and get to know them on a more personal basis than just up in the room, do your thing and leave. And a lot of times they'll spend twice as much as what they usually would have spent.
Well, don't you build up a personal clientele who'll call you again and again?
Oh, I have a lot of regular
Repeat customers,
people.
you might say.
Yeah.
But you can't use your own place.
Right now, I have a place that I do use. It's not my home.
But you got to watch for the body house charge.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'll only bring people there that I've seen 2, 3, 4 times before.
if they can't get you for soliciting, they're watching now for dealing with to follow you, and if they go back to the same place with different people,
break in the door,
they'll know you for a body
in.
house. That's right. But let me ask you a question. What education do you have?
Well, I finished high school.
Finished high school?
Yeah, as far as I got.
Okay, 20 questions. Is prostitution illegal in itself?
As far as their standards?
No, the very act of prostitution. I'm asking you if you know if it's illegal in itself. I'll give you the answer in a moment.
Okay, in Vancouver,
I mean, you're a girl who's been in the business for 5 years.
Very vague. I've worked a lot of different cities, and I've known just what it is, but with this recent thing that is happening, I really don't know.
No, well, prostitution is not illegal in itself. It's soliciting, keeping the body house, procuring if you're involved with a pimp and that kind of thing. How come you managed to stay clear of all these things?
Well, I think all the vice out there know I don't have a man.
Yeah.
And as far as chasing someone down the street and stuffing them in a cab, I don't do that.
You're not going to do that. Where else have you worked?
I've worked Hawaii for a few years. I've worked Vegas for a few years. I've worked California. I've been to Japan and
You worked in Japan?
Yeah.
Just went out as a tourist?
No, I was there for 2 months.
How did you get out there?
Well...
Tourists take you?
Yeah. My trip was taken care of.
A Japanese tourist took you?
Who I met in Hawaii.
And Hawaii, that must be a happy hunting ground for working girls.
Hawaii is very good, yes.
How about Las Vegas? I thought that was a tough, protected town where you had to be on the list to be allowed to operate.
I've never been on any kind of, I've never paid off security, I've never paid off ICE, I've never done anything like that. I've always been on my own. And in Vegas, you can work for a while, but after a while security starts to get to know you too well, and vice, you have to see them before they see you, otherwise you go to jail. It's
because they have trouble with invaders, don't they, in Vegas?
What
Invasions.
the problem is they have a lot of girls from LA that are kind of part-time working girls. And they come in on weekends. And they come in, and everyone in Vegas carries maybe $3,000 in pocket change. That's in their money clip. That's not even in their wallets. They carry a lot of money because, they're out for gambling. And what they do is, maybe it's 5 o'clock in the morning, the man's been gambling all night long. They find a working girl sitting at the bar of Caesar's Palace or wherever. And, they take them upstairs and they fall asleep, within a matter of an hour or so.
They rob them.
And they rob them for everything they have.
Professional thieves.
Go back, they go back to,
Well, as far as you're
LA,
concerned, is Vancouver the best happy hunting ground for hookers? Or is it kind of too-bit?
Vancouver, well, I like it because it's my hometown, but it can be really good. It used to be a lot better, but it's
a lot better? Why was it better then?
Say 4 or 5 years ago, it was better, money-wise.
Well, more money around.
Oh, yeah.
I was thinking maybe you're meeting more competition now from junkie chippies, amateurs.
And it's funny, in Vancouver, they kind of stay on their own streets. Everybody has a street to them. All the junkies, they can stay on Granville Street, and all the gay people who like to dress up as women, they can stay on Davie Street. Sometimes
you can't tell to look at them. You can tell.
Usually you can't.
And then the real cheap ones are down the 200 block East Georgia.
Yeah.
So therefore you operate uptown.
But they always talk about where we are, that there's a money war going on or something, but there isn't.
Yeah, I was told that the prices are being dickered down a lot these days.
No, it isn't. It's all one set rate. The girls will go lower. They'll start out at a certain price, but they'll go lower, but they won't go under, a certain rate.
Give me the rates.
Well, it's usually, if I was talking to you or whatever, it would be 100.
And you'd be talked down to 50 on a quiet night?
Not 50,
75. 60.
You try for 75, but it'll go down to 60.
And how many tricks? Well, you don't care. You'd rather have 2 tricks at 100 than 3 at 60.
Oh, definitely.
Well, 4 at 60.
Definitely.
Why don't they legalize the whole business?
I don't know. If they could control or halfway keep track of who was cool, who was not into robbing and things like that, and keep the wrong kind of people out of the way, there'd be no problems at all, because no one's out to hurt anybody.
Any kids?
As far as working girls,
have you any children?
Oh, no.
Can you let your daughter to grow up and work Georgia Street?
No, that's a hard question, because this is something I'm doing and I do not plan on doing forever. I'm saving up, and someday I'm going to quit.
And you wouldn't, and you're going to get married, of course.
Oh, yeah, and have babies and
have babies.
the whole thing.
But you wouldn't want your daughter to work Georgia Street, would you?
That would be hard. No, and I'm very open-minded, and I know all the different things that a working person can go through as far as dealing with customers, dealing with the police, and certain things, dealing with other women sometimes.
Much competition on the street?
I don't worry about competition.
No fight?
No, there's nothing.
Not while you're young.
But as far as...
How long can you do this? How old are you now?
I'm 22.
22? How long?
I can meet till when I'm 25.
25?
Yeah. Then I'm going to quit.
You wouldn't want her daughter to be on Georgia Street, I'll tell you, and neither would you. More phones now. I said, I can't use your call because the quality's too bad. Try me again one morning. Where do you want me to go, Linda?
What?
Are you there? You'll be the first call. Keep it short, love, will you? Right, and loud. Are you there? You're the second call. Don't go away, love. You'll be the second call. Speak up good and loud. I've really had my say and made my position fairly clear. I think an instant amendment to the criminal code to permit the conviction of simple soliciting is what this country needs. I should tell you that in Toronto, what I should say to you this, is this stopped the booking of hookers all across the country? Well, in Toronto, the police, because of the Yonge Street dreadful murder, have kind of closed their eyes to Debra Hutt and what they were doing was they were charging the girls with soliciting and then adjourning them to the fall, hoping some miracle would happen. Because that Supreme Court of Canada decision, I am reliably informed, means that simple soliciting, even to the extent I told you earlier, cannot bring a conviction. So in Toronto, they've been charging people with girls on the street, or drag queens or whatever, with causing a disturbance, which is not a proper charge and probably won't stand up in courts. I understand it would not stand up here. Go ahead, please.
Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I'd like to agree with you completely. I think prostitution in Vancouver should be cleaned up, but we have to remember that Vancouver is a business-oriented society, and that's where, I mean, where is all this business coming from for these hookers? It's from the businessman at lunch hour.
It's not, I don't want to slander businessmen, it's from tourists, businessmen, ordinary guys.
Sure, but...
all forms of society.
But the large majority is the businessman.
Well, I don't know that.
Well, you know...
Swingers, people downtown at night, rounders, of which we have a fair number.
Sure, but we have to, you know, like that.
You want to charge the customers, do you?
It's to Vancouver. It's the businessman, whether out of town or...
Do you want to charge the customers?
Yes.
Okay, in that case, we've still got to get that simple cleaning up of the criminal code, and then that could be done. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I just want to comment, that caller from Germany?
Yes.
I think they should be legalized. I think it might work, and it's not degrading to the girls.
Oh.
No.
Would you like to do it?
I've done it.
In Vancouver?
No, in another city in Canada.
And did you do well?
So you're missing a kind of an important...
I'd like to hear your point.
Well, the girls like it. The majority, just listen to those girls that you interviewed. Most of them enjoy it.
Look,
like the money.
I could have gone down to East Georgia and done some painful interviews with some poor chippies on junk.
I'm not, that's the only thing. I was never on the streets and I was never in the bars.
Let me ask you a question. Did you operate on your own or did you pay your money over to your protector?
I never had a protector.
So you therefore wasn't really full-time?
I'm talking about a period over 15 years.
15 years. And you managed to stay out of all trouble?
Absolutely.
And you enjoyed it?
I enjoyed it, and most girls do.
Would you recommend it for your family?
The ones that don't like it, they're too, I mean, I hate to knock them, but it's an absolute fact. They're just too lazy to get out of it.
Listen, would you want your family in the business?
If I had children?
Yeah.
No.
No, of course you would. There's the answer. Go ahead, please. What are you?
Hello?
That's you, ma'am.
Yes, I just wanted to say that I'm all for what you stand for in this this fight. And I was listening to those girls that you were interviewing, and they all seem to be quite insulted by being called prostitutes, and they want to be called working girls. Well, I think this is kind of degrading to the average working girl.
So do I. I don't like the phrase working girls either, because in my view, a working girl is a girl who goes downtown and goes to the office or goes to the plant or whatever. It's like another term, which I won't get into this morning. It's a misuse of the English language, if nothing else. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, Mr. Webster?
Yes.
That second last woman that you were just interviewing.
You mean the one I just finished interviewing?
Yeah, I think that was a shame the way she said she enjoyed it. I can't see any...
What else is she going to say?
...to an extent at wanting to enjoy it. I've been down there for 13 years, except for the last 2.5 years. Davie, Granville, Georgia, Hastings, and one time that scared me when a Negro guy from the States threatened to break my legs and arms if I didn't have $400 for him by 5 o'clock, which this man I had never seen in my life.
You mean he accosted you and said, I'm going to be your protector. I want $400 by 5 o'clock or I'll break your legs.
That is right. Until I told 2 motorcycle police officers about this guy, the same night they found him in the alley behind the Stratford Hotel and arrested him.
Now, you were known to the police as a common prostitute.
Yes, I was.
You did 13 years in it. How much money did you finish up with?
3 years ago, I bought a brand new home, a house trailer.
Wrong answer. Wrong answer.
I was using drugs quite heavy, too.
You were using drugs quite heavy?
Yes, I was.
Well, I can just shake my head and say I'm glad you survived.
Well, it's been 3.5 years since I've been even downtown to shop.
How many girls do you know who've been found in alleys or thrown out windows? Do you know about the one thing that I should say in defense of the system is that the criminal compensation section of the provincial legislature does pay compensation to prostitutes injured in the course of their business. And if you get beaten up or if you get your legs broken, or there was one dreadful case where a girl was paralyzed for life, criminal compensation does pay the same as they would pay if you were injured in any other beating up or crime.
Yeah, that's true.
But do you, like me, one thing, do you want to see the streets cleared of the present hordes of prostitutes?
Right now, I
yes or no?
There is too many.
Too many. Thank you, ma'am. More phones. I want Linda for my bye-byes.
How long? 30 seconds?
Yeah, I'm going to ask Linda if I can, please. Well, whatever you want to give me. 30 seconds will do. I'm going to ask you, and you'll say, well, tomorrow... Other towns in BC have problems, but none of the scope of dear old Vancouver. Go ahead from Kelowna.
Yes, hello. You're good. Your program is good.
Thank you.
But listen, what I really wanted to say is this prostitution sounds like big business.
It is.
But I'll tell you, the thing that I can't understand is where do they get all these men? They must be picking up real scrubby men, because a civilized man with respect for himself would never have to go to a prostitute, regardless to how beautiful she was or how much she had to offer.
Hopefully, ma'am, you're right. Go ahead, please. From Prince George.
Hello.
Yes.
If it's such a big business like the other lady said, I think it should be government controlled, because then they'll get part of their money in taxes, and also they can control. Like they could make sure that there's not junkies, that they do know what girls are clean and what girls are okay.
Oh? How do they know that? How often do you medically inspect a prostitute, an active prostitute?
I can't hear you.
How often do you medically inspect a prostitute? After every occasion?
Oh, I don't know.
Medical control of official prostitution is not successful. It merely reduces the incidence of venereal disease, but it is not a panacea, old boy. And many armies have found this in many wars.
Oh, I'm sure in Germany there's not people being thrown out windows like there are in Vancouver, etc.
I wouldn't count that, but that certainly is happening in Vancouver. I should tell you this, that when soliciting under the present law was effective, there was a proper relationship between the morality squad and the girls on the street, whereby, in a funny kind of way, the police knew where they were, what they were doing, and in some way gave them an assurance of protection. Nowadays, the police don't look after the hookers. They merely look for body houses and living off their avails and pimping. And they do a remarkable job, all things considered. Go ahead, please.
Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to say that I'm a housewife, and I traveled extensively, and also in Holland, and in that area. And I would like to say that I'd like to see prostitution legalized, because I think that would save, that would keep a lot of husbands at home and save a lot of marriages.
Okay, ma'am, you're entitled to that. I don't agree with you. Go ahead, please.
Jack, one quick question. I'm curious to find out that these girls who come up from the United States and prostitute here in Vancouver, and then if they're caught by the authorities, then deported. And if they have goods, say a car, an apartment, all their clothing, are they just bussed down to the border and deported, or do they have time to gather their goods up and then...
Oh, they can take their personal clothing with them. I don't think there are any established body houses run by Americans, but there was one famous case I was talking to Walter Jennings about, where this guy he was a pimp, was dumped at the border, across the border by the immigration. Before the immigration officers got back to Vancouver, he was back on the street, up here. But the Immigration Act has been tightened, and there's no appeal now when it's a simple overstaying and breach of the immigration laws.
But if they have money in the Canadian bank, shouldn't we sort of tighten up things so they can't take that money out if they're a convicted prostitute?
A convicted pimp, in this case you're talking about.
Well, pimp or even a prostitute.
I think we should. I think we should. Go ahead, please.
Hello, Jack.
Yes.
I must commend you on your broad knowledge of whorehouses throughout the world. Unfortunately...
Oh, I don't want that kind of praise.
You missed Japan with the business girls, but there is a Section 27 of the Mental Health Act that the girls could be charged under. They are a danger to themselves or others. I have 12 signed affidavits by cab drivers in the city that fares jump into their cabs and want to tour the city and see the whores. I'm wondering if the city can be sued for living off the avails, or better still, the Minister of Human Resources.
No, it's not the Minister of Human Resources, it's not the Mayor of Vancouver, it's the Minister of Justice in Ottawa, who is the man who makes it easy, because they don't regard this kind of thing, which is a West Coast problem, and a Toronto problem, as anything pressing. But it's an ironic idea you suggest to me, sir. Go ahead, please.
Hello, Jack.
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment. I think prostitution is very necessary. And the only way we're going to do anything about it is get the BC government and legalize it like it is in Nevada.
You haven't been listening. You haven't been listening. How old are you?
26.
26. Well, I've been trying to make a simple case this morning that it cannot be wiped out, should not be legalized, and what must be done.
There's no other way to make it work. The BC government could make money off it.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'd love to suggest that either to Bill Bennett or to Davy Barrett, and they would slap me across the face with the handiest sheaf of documents, and they would be so entitled to do. No. Now. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, Jack. Yeah, I was listening to your program this morning, especially that interview with the prostitute, and I think, your facts regarding this I'd advise to be checked, because number one, I think you should check with the hotels downtown, especially probably the security people regarding, probably the security managers I would say the Devonshire Hotel.
No.
Number one.
No. You always... I hope that's working. I hope I've killed the sound, number one. Sorry I had to kill the sound there just now. People sometimes say injudicious things. I'll be back in a minute.
Nelly in the empty space with bookshelf Nelly. Move it back. Go there. See.
This way?
Yeah, that's it. Right. Okay, turn around. Let's see. Go on. Let's see how you are. How's that?
Whether you agreed or not, thank you for your telephone participation. It was a heavy one this morning. I just want to make my final point once again. The hordes of prostitutes can be cleaned off the streets of Vancouver in a proper legal manner when our lawmakers finally amend simply the criminal code, and it must be done very soon. Linda, that was a heavy one this morning, wasn't it?
It sure was, yes.
Not so heavy tomorrow, I hope.
Much lighter tomorrow. We're going to have fun with your spittoons tomorrow.
Oh, yes, fun with my spittoons and objects of art and artifacts. Tomorrow at 9 a.m. precisely.